In the next hour, you're going to listen to a relaxing and soothing bedtime story, or just a story to relax if you had a stressy day. Please subscribe to my channel if you like this story, and now have a good time with the Moonlit Tea Shop. Enjoy. The village was asleep. The narrow cobblestone streets, bathed in the soft silver light of the full moon, stretched quiet and empty. Lanterns swayed gently from their posts, their flames flickering as if whispering secrets to the night. The only sound was the rhythmic ticking of a distant clock tower, marking the slow passage of midnight. Yet sleep would not come. Wrapped in a warm cloak against the cool evening breeze, the traveler wandered. Their footsteps echoed softly against the stone paths, weaving past shuttered windows and ivy-covered walls. It was a night made for dreaming, and yet their mind would not rest. That was when they saw it. A door. It was small, round at the top like an acorn's cap, set into a wall where no door had ever been before. A soft, golden glow pulsed from beneath its frame, inviting warm, like candlelight through frosted glass. The travelers stepped closer, drawn by an invisible thread of curiosity. The air smelled of something sweet and familiar, honey, perhaps, or chamomile. On the door was a sign, written in curling silver script. The Moonlit Tea Shop, open only at midnight. The traveler hesitated. This had not been here before. And yet, as if carried by the gentle hush of the night itself, their hand reached out. Their fingers brushed the doorknob's smooth, cool brass, comforting in its solidness. The moment they turned it, the door creaked open, revealing a world that smelled of dried herbs, warm spices, and something older, something magical. Inside, the shop was small, but full of life. Shelves lined the walls, packed with jars of tea leaves, bundles of dried lavender, and tiny bottles of golden honey. Hanging lanterns shaped like teapots cast a warm, golden light, their glow flickering like the last embers of a hearth. A small fireplace crackled in the corner, its flames dancing lazily as if stretching from a long sleep. At the center of it all, behind a polished wooden counter, stood Elderberry. The badger had fur like silver-threaded twilight and eyes like polished amber, deep and kind. He wore a patchwork vest of earthy tones, and his paws moved with the steady grace of someone who had spent a lifetime brewing comfort into cups. He looked up as the traveler entered, as if he had been expecting them all along. Elderberry said, his voice low and warm, like a story told by the fire. You found your way. The traveler, uncertain yet at ease, stepped forward. Couldn't sleep. Elderberry nodded, as if this was the most natural thing in the world. Then you've come to the right place. Here, we serve tea for dreamers, wanderers, and restless souls. He gestured to a small wooden chair near the counter. Said, let me make you something special. The traveler sat, the chair creaking just slightly, as if settling into an old friendship. The air was thick with the scent of herbs and honey, and the sound of the crackling fire wrapped around them like a well-worn blanket. Elderberry moved with slow precision, selecting a small jar from the shelves. He tapped a small heap of golden petals into a teapot, added steaming water from an old copper kettle, and stirred gently with a wooden spoon. The scent of chamomile and sun-warmed fields filled the air, rich and soothing. This, Elderberry said, pouring the tea into a delicate porcelain cup, is chamomile meadow tea, perfect for a weary traveler. The traveler wrapped their hand around the cup. It was warm, the rim smooth against their lips as they took a cautious sip. The moment the tea touched their tongue, the world changed. They were no longer in the tea shop. Instead, they stood in a sunlit meadow where golden chamomile flowers swayed in the breeze. Bees hummed lazily, drifting from petal to petal, their wings catching the light like tiny stained glass windows. The warmth of the sun kissed their skin, and a soft wind rustled the tall grass, carrying the sweet scent of wildflowers. The traveler let out a breath they hadn't realized they were holding. They had never been here before, and yet it felt like home. Time moved differently in the meadow. There was no rush, no weight pressing on their chest, no restless thoughts circling like birds in a storm. Just warmth and light and the steady hum of life all around them. They closed their eyes. Breathe in, breathe out. When they opened their eyes again, they were back in the tea shop. The fire still crackled. The lanterns still swayed. Elderberry watched them with knowing eyes, a gentle smile tugging at the corners of his muzzle. "Better?" he asked. The traveler nodded, a deep, peaceful heaviness settling over them. Their thoughts had quieted. Their body felt lighter, as if the weight they had carried for so long had been set down for just a moment. Elderberry chuckled softly. Chamomile meadow tea is a special brew. It reminds you how to rest. The traveler placed the empty cup back on the counter, the warmth of the tea still lingering inside them. They searched for the right word, but none seemed to fit. Elderberry nodded as if he understood. "Come back tomorrow," he said. "There are many more teas to try." The traveler hesitated, then smiled. "I think I will." As they stepped back out onto the cobblestone street, the door clicking softly shut behind them, the air felt different, softer, quieter, like the village itself was tucking them in for the night. And for the first time in what felt like forever, sleep came easily. The traveler woke feeling lighter, as if the tea from the night before had smoothed out the tangled knots in their thoughts. The air of the village still carried the crispness of dawn, and the cobblestone streets glistened faintly with the last traces of morning mist. All through the day, as they walked through the village, the memory of the Moonlit Tea Shop lingered in their mind like the fading scent of chamomile on their clothes. Had it been real? Or was it just a dream conjured from exhaustion and sleepless wandering? But as the stars began to blink into the deepening sky, a familiar warmth stirred in their chest. The pull of curiosity, and something deeper, something they couldn't quite name, urged them back through the quiet streets. And when the clock tower whispered its first chime of midnight, they saw it. The door. It was exactly as they had left it, round-topped, glowing softly with that golden, inviting light. It hadn't been there a moment before, but now it stood, as though it had always been waiting for them. The traveler didn't hesitate this time. They reached for the brass doorknob, felt its cool, steady weight in their palm, and stepped inside. The tea shop was just as they remembered, warm and timeless, filled with the comforting scents of dried herbs, honey, and something delicate they couldn't quite place. The lanterns, shaped like teapots, swayed ever so slightly as if greeting them. The fireplace in the corner crackled lazily, its golden glow stretching across the wooden shelves lined with jars of tea leaves and tiny, corked bottles of unknown ingredients. And there, behind the counter, stood Elderberry. The old badger looked up from the copper kettle he was polishing, his amber eyes twinkling. "Ah," he said, a knowing smile tugging at the corners of his muzzle. "Back again." The traveler returned the smile and nodded. "I think I had to be." Elderberry chuckled, setting the kettle aside. "That's how it goes with the Moonlit Tea Shop. It calls to those who need it." Before the traveler could ask what that meant, a flutter of wings interrupted them. A small owl sat perched on one of the wooden beams above, its feathers ruffled, its wide golden eyes darting nervously around the room. It let out a soft, uncertain hoot before shuffling its feet and attempting to smooth its feathers. Elderberry glanced up. "You're early tonight, little one." The owl fluffed up indignantly, its tiny talons clenching the beam. "I couldn't stay out there." The night feels too big tonight. The traveler tilted their head. Too big. The owl turned its bright gaze toward them, as if only just noticing their presence. You know, it said, voice small. Sometimes the sky is just too wide, and the stars feel like they might pull you right up into them. The traveler considered that. They had felt that before, lying awake under an open sky, feeling like the world was stretching too far, too endless, as if they might just drift away. Elderberry gave a patient nod. A night of restless thoughts. The owl shuffled again, looking embarrassed. I suppose. Elderberry turned and reached for a small tin on one of the shelves, pulling it down with careful paws. Then I believe it's time for lavender star tea. Elderberry moved with practiced ease, scooping dried lavender blossoms into a tea strainer before placing it gently in a ceramic teapot. He poured steaming water over the flowers, releasing a deep, soothing fragrance that curled through the air like a lullaby. The traveler inhaled deeply. The scent was rich and calming, laced with something cool and crisp, like fresh air on a clear night. As the tea steeped, Elderberry spoke. Lavender star tea is special. It carries the quiet of the night, but not the kind that makes you feel lost. The kind that wraps around you like a soft blanket, making the world feel smaller, cozier. The owl gave a hesitant hoot, watching as Elderberry poured the tea into a cup and slid it toward them. Go on, the badger encouraged. Take a sip. The owl fluffed its feathers, hesitated, then dipped its beak into the cup. The moment the tea touched its tongue, something magical happened. The room seemed to shift, the wooden beams above stretching into an open sky, lanterns flickering and transforming into tiny, glowing constellations. The scent of lavender deepened, wrapping around them like the gentle embrace of twilight. The traveler felt the shift too. Their heartbeats slowed, their breathing became steady. The tea shop no longer felt like four walls and a roof, but something much larger, stretching into the sky while still holding them safely in place. And then came the sound. A soft, shimmering melody, like the distant twinkling of stars. It wasn't a song in the way humans sing, but rather a hum, a presence, a celestial lullaby whispered by the universe itself. The owl let out a small sigh, their wings loosening. Oh, they murmured, eyes half-lidded. It's quieter now. Elderberry nodded. The night is not as big when you know you are a part of it, rather than lost within it. The traveler took their own sip of the tea and felt it settle into their bones like warmth from the inside out. Their worries felt smaller, their thoughts softer. The sky outside might be endless, but here, within the glow of the tea shop, they were anchored. The owl let out one last contented hoot before curling its head beneath its wing, already drifting into sleep. Elderberry smiled, gathering the empty cups. Rest comes easier when we remember we belong to the night just as much as it belongs to us. The traveler nodded, feeling the weight of drowsiness settle comfortably over them. They glanced toward the tea shelves, curiosity sparking once more. How many teas do you have? They asked. Elderberry chuckled, his amber eyes twinkling. More than you can count. But each one finds its way to the right guest at the right time. The traveler yawned, stretching as they stood. I think I'll be back tomorrow, then. The badger inclined his head. I expect you will. As the travelers stepped back out onto the cobblestone street, the night felt different, softer, safer, as if the stars above were no longer watching from a distance but keeping them company. And for the second night in a row, they slept soundly. The third night came with a whisper of salt in the air. The village, usually wrapped in the stillness of evening, carried something different tonight, a breeze that curled through the cobblestone streets, carrying the distant echo of waves against the shore. The traveler had spent the day listening to the hush of trees and the wind, the quiet murmur of the river beyond the hills, and yet beneath it all, they could hear something more. The ocean. But there was no sea near this village. And yet, as the clock tower let out its slow, steady chime midnight, the traveler felt a pull stronger than before. The certainty. The door was waiting. The brass handle was cool beneath their fingertips, the golden glow from within pulsing like the gentle rhythm of a tide. As the traveler stepped inside, the familiar scent of herbs and wood smoke welcomed them home. Elderberry stood behind a counter as always, a warm light in his amber eyes. The teapot lanterns above swayed slightly, as if caught in a phantom breeze. The traveler opened their mouth to greet him, but before they could speak, a new voice filled the room, soft, low, and wistful. "I miss the ocean." The traveler turned. Sitting at one of the low wooden tables, the sea turtle rested with a heavy sigh. Their shell was patterned like rippling waves, polished and smooth, but their eyes held the weight of something lost. A deep longing, as if they were meant to be somewhere else, carried on unseen currents. Elderberry moved with quiet understanding, placing a paw on the turtle's shell. "It has been some time since you've seen it, hasn't it?" The turtle nodded slowly. "Too long." The traveler hesitated. "You're far from the sea?" The turtle let out a small hum. "Far enough that I forget what it sounds like. I dream of the waves, but when I wake, they're gone. Just silence." The traveler understood that feeling, the ache of something slipping further and further away, like trying to hold onto water with open hands. Elderberry, ever patient, reached up to one of the shelves. "I believe," he said, "it's a night for mint wave tea." The badger moved with practiced ease, selecting a handful of dried mint leaves, their color deep as sea glass. As he crushed them gently between his paws, the scent of freshness bloomed in the air, cool, crisp, edged with something deeper, something wild. The traveler inhaled deeply. There was something about it that woke them up, not in a way morning light does, but in a way standing at the edge of a vast, endless ocean does. It was alive. Elderberry placed the leaves into a glass teapot, then poured in steaming water. As the traveler watched, the clear liquid swirled and deepened into a soft blue-green hue, like the shallows of a sunlit shore. He set 3 cups on the table, one for the turtle, one for the traveler, and one for himself. "Drink," he said softly. The turtle, hesitant but hopeful, dipped their beak-like mouth to the rim of the cup. The traveler followed, lifting the warm porcelain to their lips. And the moment the tea touched their tongue, the waves came. The walls of the tea shop seemed to fade, dissolving like mist, and suddenly they were no longer sitting at a wooden table, but standing on a vast stretch of golden sand. The scent of mint transformed into sea spray, crisp and salty. The air was thick with the hum of waves, rolling in a steady rhythm, each crest curling, breaking, retreating. The wind carried the distant cry of gulls, and in the moonlight, the sea stretched out forever, an endless shimmering silver blue. The traveler felt the cool sand beneath their feet. The turtle took a deep breath, their chest expanding as if remembering how to breathe. Their eyes filled with something unreadable, relief, joy, longing. They stepped forward, leaving small imprints in the damp sand. "I can hear it again," they whispered. The waves. The ocean is still there. Elderberry's voice drifted to them on the wind, steady and knowing. The things we love never truly leave us. Sometimes, we just need to be reminded. The traveler let out a slow breath. They had never lived by the sea, and yet standing there, hearing the gentle, ceaseless rhythm of the waves, they felt something inside them loosen, as if they had been carrying a tide within their own chest all along. When the traveler blinked, the tea shop was back. The sand, the wind, the rolling waves. But the sound of the sea still echoed in their ears, a memory now, rather than a dream. The turtle let out a long, slow exhale. Their expression had softened, the tension that had curled in their shell eased. "Thank you," they murmured, looking to Elderberry. I think I can sleep now." The badger gave a slow nod. "Good." The turtle finished the last sip of their tea, then, with a heavy-lidded gaze, curled into their shell. Within moments, they had drifted into a deep, peaceful slumber, their breathing slow and steady, like the rise and fall of the tide. The travelers set their empty cup down, running a finger along the smooth porcelain. "The tea," they murmured. It really did sound like the ocean. Elderberry smiled, gathering the cups. Because it was the ocean, at least the part of it that lingers in memory. The places we love leave echoes inside of us. We just have to listen. The traveler leaned back in their chair, letting the warmth of the tea settle deep in their bones. The pull of the sea still hummed within them, but instead of longing, it simply was. A steady presence, a rhythm they could carry with them. They glanced toward the shelves, curiosity stirring once more. "And the other teas?" Elderberry chuckled, his eyes gleaming. "Plenty more to discover, traveler." The traveler smiled. They already knew they'd be back. As they stepped out into the cool night air, the breeze carried a whisper of salt with it, an echo, a memory, a promise. And for the third night in a row, sleep came easily. The village lay wrapped in a hush, the sky a canvas of deep indigo, stitched with silver stars. A warm breeze whispered through the narrow cobblestone streets, rustling the ivy that clung to the old stone buildings. It carried the scent of something faintly sweet, honey and wildflowers. The traveler walked without hesitation tonight. Each night, returning to the Moonlit Tea Shop felt more natural, as if they had been coming here their whole life. The shop no longer felt like a discovery, but a place that had been waiting for them all along. As the clock tower chimed midnight, the door appeared once more. Round-topped, warm-lit, its brass handle cool and familiar beneath their fingers. The traveler opened it, stepping inside, and at once, the world outside melted away. The tea shop was just as it had been, yet somehow always new. Tonight, the lanterns burned lower, casting flickering golden pools of light across the wooden shelves. The scent of herbs and dried fruit wove through the air, mingling with the soft crackle of the fireplace. Elderberry stood behind the counter as always, his silver-streaked fur catching the glow of the candlelight. He was polishing a small glass jar filled with amber-colored honey, his touch slow and careful. But tonight there was someone else. In the farthest corner of the shop, curled into the shadows, sat a fox. The traveler barely noticed them at first, only the flick of a dark-tipped ear, the glint of golden eyes peering from beneath a heavy traveling cloak. The fox sat stiff and quiet, paws clasped around a delicate silver locket that hung from their neck. Elderberry followed the traveler's gaze and gave a small nod. "Our guest tonight is carrying something heavy." The fox's ears twitched, but they didn't look up. The traveler hesitated, stepping toward the empty chair across from the fox. "May I sit?" For a moment, there was only silence. Then, slowly, the fox nodded. As the travelers settled into the chair, they noticed the locket more clearly now, resting in the fox's trembling paws. It was small, worn at the edges, its surface etched with a faint outline of wildflowers. Elderberry's voice, low and patient, broke the quiet. "Would you like some tea?" The fox exhaled softly. Yes, they murmured. Something warm. Elderberry nodded, turning toward his shelves, his movements deliberate. I believe it is a night for honeyed memory tea. The badger selected a small glass jar from his shelves, the same one he had been polishing when the traveler entered. He held it up to the light for a moment before twisting open the lid. At once, the air filled with sweetness. Not just the scent of honey, but something deeper. A whisper of blooming fields in the height of summer, the warmth of sunlight on bare skin, the laughter of voices that hadn't been heard in a long time. Elderberry scooped a generous spoonful of the golden honey into a teapot, then reached for a bundle of dried chamomile and wildflower petals, adding them with care. As he poured hot water over the mixture, the tea glowed, its soft, golden color deepening like the setting sun. As it steeped, Elderberry turned to the fox, his voice gentle. "You carry a memory with you tonight." The fox flinched, their paws tightening around the locket. "I don't want to forget." Elderberry shook his head. Memory and forgetting are not the same as holding on and letting go. The fox said nothing, their golden eyes locked on the steam rising from the teapot. Elderberry poured 3 cups and placed them on the table. "Drink," he said, his voice steady, "and let the memory come." The traveler lifted their cup, feeling the warmth seep into their fingers. The honey-sweet aroma filled their lungs, and as they took their first sip, the world shifted. The walls of the shop faded. The wooden shelves, the hanging lanterns, even the crackling fire, all dissolved into golden light. And then, just as softly, the light became something else. The travelers stood in a vast field of wildflowers. The air was thick with the hum of honeybees, drifting lazily from bloom to bloom. Tall sunflowers swayed in the breeze, their golden faces turned toward a sky painted in the soft blush of early evening. The scent of sweet grass and warm earth curled through the air, wrapping around them like an old embrace. And just ahead, laughter. A voice, light and full of warmth. A lullaby, half sung, half hummed. The traveler turned toward the sound, and suddenly they were back in the tea shop. The glow of the lanterns returned, the wooden beams above, the steady presence of Elderberry across the counter. But something was different. The fox sat perfectly still, their golden eyes filled with tears. The locket in their paws was open. Inside, pressed beneath a thin sheet of glass, was a faded photograph. A fox, younger than the one before them, nestled in the arms of an elderly vixen. The traveler understood then. The lullaby, the warmth of a summer field, the way honey had smelled like home. The fox's voice was barely a whisper. She used to hum when she cooked. I haven't heard it in so long. Elderberry's eyes softened. You never lost it. The fox swallowed, staring down at the locket. Their paws no longer trembled. A long silence stretched between them before the fox let out a slow, steady breath. Then, for the first time that night, they smiled. Not a big smile, not an easy one, but a real one. Elderberry nodded approvingly. Memories don't fade when we let them rest. They live in the warmth of honey, in the scent of wildflowers, in the songs we hum without realizing. The fox closed the locket gently and held it to their chest. I think I can sleep now. Elderberry reached for a soft, patchwork blanket folded over the back of a chair. He draped it over the fox's shoulders as they curled into themselves, their breathing deep and even, already drifting into peaceful dreams. The travelers set their empty cup on the table, feeling warmth settle deep in their chest. The tea, it doesn't just help us remember, does it? Elderberry smiled knowingly. No, It helps us keep. The traveler stood, stretching slightly. The weight of sleep pulled at their limbs, but tonight it did not feel heavy. It felt like something safe. They glanced at the shelves, where dozens of other jars and tins waited, filled with unknown teas, unknown stories. And the next tea? Elderberry chuckled, his amber eyes twinkling. Tomorrow night will bring what tomorrow night brings. The travelers smiled. They already knew they'd be back. As they stepped out into the warm night, the breeze carried the faintest hint of honey. And for the fourth night in a row, they slept soundly. The village slumbered under a blanket of deep indigo, the air thick with the crispness of early autumn. The scent of distant hearth fires curled through the narrow streets, mingling with the faint aroma of spiced apples from the market stalls that had closed hours before. Somewhere, an owl hooted, low, mellow sound that melted into the quiet hum of the night. The traveler walked without hesitation now, their feet carrying them toward the place that felt more real than the world they had left behind. At the stroke of midnight, the door appeared once again. Warm golden light pooled at its base, flickering slightly as though the tea shop itself was breathing. The brass handle was cool in the traveler's palm, familiar, steadying. The door swung open with ease, and they stepped inside. Inside, the tea shop was wrapped in warmth. Tonight, the lanterns burned lower than usual, their glow rich and golden, like the last embers of a dying fire. The scent of cinnamon curled thickly through the air, blended with a deep, buttery aroma of something baking. At the center of it all stood Elderberry, his silvered fur touched with warm light, his amber eyes twinkling as he polished the rim of an old earthenware teapot. He looked up as the traveler entered, and as always, there was no surprise in his gaze. "Welcome back," he said, his voice as soothing as the crackling fire in the corner. The traveler smiled. Before they could speak, a small sniffle broke the quiet. In the corner of the shop, curled up on a cushioned bench, sat a child. They couldn't have been more than 7 or 8 years old. Their curly hair was tangled, their small hands clutched at the edges of a thick patchwork blanket wrapped around their shoulders. Their eyes, wide and tired, were rimmed with the faintest hint of dried tears. Elderberry's gaze softened as he followed the traveler's eyes. "A restless dreamer," he murmured. The traveler hesitated, then stepped toward the bench. "Hello," they said gently. The child blinked up at them. "Hi." Their voice was small. The traveler crouched slightly. "Couldn't sleep." The child shook their head, fingers tightening around the blanket. "I had a bad dream." Elderberry's voice rumbled softly from the counter. "Dreams have a way of clinging to us long after we wake." He turned toward his shelves, running a careful paw along the labeled tins. "But I think I have just the thing." He pulled down a wooden box, carved with swirling patterns. The traveler watched as he opened the lid, revealing a neat bundle of cinnamon sticks, tied together with twine. Their scent bloomed into the air, warm, rich, the essence of crackling hearth fires and fresh-baked bread. The child's nose wrinkled slightly. "That smells nice." Elderberry chuckled. "That's because it is." He carefully untied a single stick, breaking it into smaller pieces before adding it to a teapot along with a pinch of nutmeg and crushed cloves. As he poured in the steaming water, the traveler swore the scent grew thicker. It was warmth itself, spun into something tangible. The badger hummed softly as he worked, his voice low and deep, like the sound of the wind through tall trees. "Cinnamon dream tea is special," he said. "It takes a dream, holds it close, and teaches it how to be gentle." He poured the tea into 3 cups, one for the child, one for the traveler, and one for himself. The child hesitated, their small fingers curling around the warm ceramic. What if I have another bad dream? Elderberry's amber eyes gleamed with quiet knowing. Then we'll find a way to change it. The child pursed their lips, considering, then took a tentative sip. The traveler followed, letting the spiced warmth bloom across their tongue. And then, the walls of the tea shop flickered. The wooden beams, the shelves, the gentle glow of the lanterns, they all faded, shifting like mist curling away from the morning sun. And suddenly, they weren't in the tea shop at all. They were sitting before a grand, roaring fireplace. The hearth was massive, its stones worn smooth with age. Flames flickered high, casting golden light across the deep red carpet beneath them. Plush chairs sat in a circle, thick blankets draped across them, waiting like open arms. Outside the large windows, the night stretched endlessly, but was not empty. Instead of a void of darkness, the sky was painted with stories. Soft, shimmering figures drifted across the glass, shapes made of golden light. A bear curled into a den of stars. A great bird, its wings stretching into the darkness, shedding sparks of silver with every beat. A rabbit bounding over the endless sky, chased only by the glow of the moon. The child's breath hitched. The stars. Elderberry's voice was soft behind them. Dreams can be rewritten, little one. The child let out a small breath, their wide eyes reflecting the dancing constellations above. I like this one better. Elderberry smiled. The traveler felt something shift inside their chest, a quiet, steady warmth, like sinking into a bed piled high with soft blankets after a long day. The dream was safe. The tea had caught hold of something fragile and frightened and spun it into something gentle. And when the traveler blinked, they were back in the shop. The child let out a sleepy yawn, rubbing at their eyes. The blanket around their shoulders had slipped slightly, their small frame sinking further into the bench. Elderberry reached over, tucking the fabric snugly around them. "Rest now," he murmured. "You'll find the dreams are kinder tonight." The child gave a slow, contented sigh, and within moments, they had drifted into sleep. The traveler watched them for a moment, then glanced down at their own empty cup. The scent of cinnamon still clung to the air, but it had changed. Softer now, like the distant memory of a fire that has long since burned to embers. They set the cup down gently. "It really does change dreams, doesn't it?" Elderberry chuckled, gathering the cups. "Dreams are nothing more than stories we tell ourselves, and stories can always be rewritten." The traveler let that thought settle deep inside them. They already knew they would return tomorrow. As they stepped out into the night air, the scent of cinnamon still lingered, wrapping around them like the final notes of a lullaby. And for the 5th night in a row, they slept soundly. The village was quiet tonight, wrapped in a hush of early autumn. A thin mist curled through the cobblestone streets, rising from the river beyond the hills, its silver tendrils weaving between shuttered windows and ivy-draped doorways. The air smelled of damp earth and the faintest trace of fallen leaves, yet beneath it lingered something sweeter. Jasmine. The traveler wasn't sure if they were imagining it, but as they walked through the village, their steps carrying them toward the familiar golden glow, the scent of blooming flowers seemed to follow them. The door appeared at midnight, round-topped, warm-lit, its brass handle waiting beneath the traveler's fingers. They hesitated, just for a moment, before pushing it open and stepping inside. The tea shop was different tonight. Not in its shape or size, the same wooden shelves lined with jars of tea leaves, the same teapot-shaped lantern swaying lazily overhead, but something had changed. The scent of jasmine was everywhere. Thin vines curled along the walls, tiny white blossoms opening beneath the gentle glow of the lanterns. Their petals trembled slightly, as if moved by a breeze that did not exist. And in the center of it all, hunched over a steaming cup, was a wolf. Their fur was a deep, smoky gray, silver at the edges like the mist curling through the village. Their ears twitched at the soft creak of the door, but they did not look up. The traveler had seen many guests in the tea shop, an owl who feared the vastness of the night, a turtle longing for the sea, a fox carrying a memory in a locket. But this wolf looked lost. Elderberry stood behind a counter as always, watching with quiet understanding. He did not greet the traveler this time. Instead, he simply nodded toward the empty seat across from the wolf. The traveler hesitated, then stepped forward. "May I sit?" A long silence stretched between them before the wolf finally nodded. The travelers settled into the chair, folding their hands over the table. The wolf's eyes were cast downward, their claws resting against the ceramic of their cup. Their shoulders were tense, like they had been holding something inside for too long. Elderberry's voice broke the quiet, deep and steady. "A restless soul." The wolf let out a breath, a slow, careful exhale, as though even breathing too deeply might shatter something fragile inside of them. "I miss my pack." Their voice was low, rough, as if they hadn't spoken in a long time. Elderberry nodded. "Distance." The wolf shook their head, wry, bitter smile pulling at their muzzle. "No, I know exactly where they are." The traveler frowned. "Then why aren't you with them?" The wolf's golden eyes flickered toward them, just for a moment, before dropping back to their tea. "I left," they said simply. Another silence. Longer, heavier this time. Elderberry, unhurried as ever, turned to his shelves. "I believe," he said, "it is a night for jasmine whisperer tea." The badger's movements were slow, practiced. He reached for a small cloth pouch tied with a delicate silver string. As he loosened the knot, the scent of fresh jasmine bloomed into the air, thick and intoxicating. But there was something else, too. Something soft, like the memory of voices carried on the wind. The travelers swore they could hear it. Not words, not exactly, but the hum of something familiar, distant, calling. Elderberry took a small handful of the dried jasmine petals, scattering them into a glass teapot. He added a touch of honey, a splash of moon-white vanilla, and poured hot water over the mixture, watching as the petals swirled and unfurled like stars blooming in the night sky. The wolf did not look up. Elderberry set 3 cups onto the table, filling each one with pale, golden tea. Its steam curled upward, carrying with it a whisper, soft, distant, waiting. The traveler lifted their cup, inhaling deeply, and the moment they took their first sip, the world shifted. They were no longer in the tea shop. The wooden walls, the swaying lanterns, the crackling fire, all of it melted away, and in its place, a vast, endless field beneath a silver moon. The air was thick with the scent of jasmine, their white blossoms spilling across the hills like stars fallen to earth. A soft wind rolled through the grass, cool against the traveler's skin, carrying something with it. A sound, a chorus of low, distant howls. The traveler turned. The wolf stood beside them, ears alert, tail still. Their golden eyes, once dull, heavy with something unspoken, were bright now. Why? They knew this place. Their breath came quicker, their chest rising and falling like they had been running for a very long time. The howls grew stronger. Not haunting, not lonely, calling. The wolf's ears twitched. Their body leaned forward, just slightly, as if pulled towards something unseen. But then, they hesitated. Their claws curled into the soft earth. Their tails stiffened. The light in their eyes dimmed, just a little. Elderberry's voice drifted toward them, steady, certain. "You are not forgotten." The wolf's breath hitched. The howls swelled around them, rolling across the jasmine fields like a tide returning to shore. The wind carried names that had not been spoken in a long time, memories of warmth, of voices pressed close, of steady, familiar heartbeats beneath the wide-open sky. And still they hesitated. The traveler reached out gently. "You don't have to be alone," they murmured. The wolf swallowed. Then, finally, they took a step forward. The jasmine fields faded. The warmth of the lanterns returned. The wooden shelves, the gentle fire, the steady weight of the tea shop settled back into place. The wolf was silent for a long time. Then, with slow, deliberate movements, they set their empty cup onto the table. Their shoulders, once tense, hunched heavy with something unseen, were looser now. They ran a paw over their muzzle, exhaling softly. "I think I forgot what it sounded like," they admitted. Elderberry nodded. "You never lost it." The wolf turned their cup slowly between their claws. "They would welcome me back." Elderberry smiled. "You already know the answer." The wolf let out a breath. This time, it did not shake. They stood, stretching slightly, and for the first time that night, they smiled. Not big, not easy, but real. The traveler watched them go, stepping out into the night air. Their silhouette faded into the mist, but the jasmine scent lingered. The traveler turned back to Elderberry. "The tea, it doesn't just remind people, does it?" Elderberry chuckled, gathering the cups. "No, it guides." The traveler smiled. As they stepped outside, the wind curled around them, soft and whispering. And for the 6th night in a row, they slept soundly. Under a velvet sky dusted with shimmering stars, the Moonlit Tea Shop glowed softly like a secret haven tucked away in a world that often forgot how to dream. Tonight, the gentle chime of the door announced the arrival of small, sorrowful rabbit, its eyes glistening with unshed tears. The shop's floor was a quiet tapestry of scattered rose petals, each one a delicate whisper of color and memory, lit by the silvery beam of the full moon that spilled in through the arched windows. Elderberry, the wise badger with a coat as soft as moonbeams and eyes full of quiet understanding, greeted the rabbit with a tender smile. "Welcome, dear one," he murmured, his voice a soothing lullaby. "Tonight, we brew the rose petal tea, a brew as gentle as the beating of a loving heart." As he spoke, the warm, aromatic steam of the tea began to rise from a pot of mysterious, glowing liquid, filling the small room with the rich, heady scent of freshly bloomed roses. The aroma was deep and enchanting, a perfume of both joy and sorrow, as if the very essence of love and loss had been distilled into each drop. The rabbit, whose name was Marigold, hesitated at first, ears drooping in grief. With a soft sigh, it took a seat at a small wooden table polished smooth by many midnight visitors, and Elderberry carefully poured the tea into a delicate porcelain cup. As the tea cascaded from the spout, it released tiny, luminous rose petals that swirled in the cup like miniature dancers performing a quiet ballet. A gentle, rhythmic sound, like the steady, reassuring beat of a heart, seemed to emerge from the tea itself, resonating softly in the stillness of the shop. "Each rose petal in this tea was gathered under the full moon," explained Elderberry in a hushed tone, his eyes crinkling kindly at the corners. "They bloom only when the night is at its most luminous. carrying within them the memories of every gentle touch and every whispered goodbye. And sometimes they capture the heartbeat of a lost friend, so that even in sorrow, there is the promise of love that endures. Marigold's voice trembled as it began to share its story. I once had a friend, a dear companion named Clover, whose laughter filled my days and whose kindness warmed my nights. We roamed the meadows beneath the endless sky, gathering wild herbs and secrets, dreaming of a world where every heart knew peace. But one fateful evening, as the autumn winds began to whisper of change, Clover disappeared like a wisp of smoke on a chilly dawn. I searched and I called, but the friend I held so close slipped away, leaving behind only echoes of our shared joy and an ache that the nights have not yet healed. As Marigold spoke, the soft cadence of its words mingled with the gentle hum of the tea's heartbeat. Each sip of the rose-petal tea seemed to carry the essence of the past, a bittersweet melody of laughter and loss, of golden days now shadowed by the quiet grief of absence. The shop, with its walls adorned by the quiet glow of lanterns and the ever-present whisper of petals falling like gentle rain, held the sorrow in a kind of sacred embrace, as if every visitor's heartache was a note in a vast, celestial lullaby. Elderberry listened intently, nodding slowly as if each word from Marigold was a precious petal to be cradled and understood. "Grief is a tender flower, dear Marigold," he said softly, "and like the roses in this tea, it blooms under the light of the full moon, beautiful in its vulnerability, resilient in its truth. Your friend Clover lives on in the memory of your laughter, in every shared adventure, and in the silent spaces of your heart where love still whispers." The rabbit's eyes shone with a mixture of sorrow and solace as it continued to recount moments of wonder and shared delight. It spoke of sunlit afternoons where Clover would lead the way through dew-kissed fields, of evenings spent beneath a sky full of stars, and of secret hideaways where they whispered hopes and dreams. Each memory was painted in soft, vivid hues: the warm amber of a setting sun, the gentle blush of a rose in full bloom, the cool silver of moonlight reflecting on quiet waters. Slowly, the magic of the rose-petal tea began to weave its gentle spell. With each sip, the painful edges of loss softened, replaced by a tender recognition that grief, like the delicate petals, was transient yet beautiful in its impermanence. The sound of the tea's heartbeat, constant and comforting, resonated deep within the shop and in Marigold's heart, urging it to breathe in the memories and exhale the sorrow. "Breathe in, breathe out," murmured Elderberry as if chanting a secret incantation, a reminder that healing was a quiet, unhurried journey, marked not by the sudden erasure of pain but by the gradual, compassionate acceptance of it. The traveler, who had been quietly watching from a shadowed corner of the shop, felt a stirring of deep empathy. In that moment, as the soft glow of the moon bathed the room in its tender light, and the rich scent of roses enveloped them, the traveler understood that every tear shed in sorrow was also a seed of hope, destined to bloom with the grace of time and love. The tea, with its magical blend of moonlit roses and the gentle heartbeat of remembrance, whispered an ancient truth, that even in the depths of loss, the spirit can find renewal, and in the quiet of the night, hearts can learn to beat in unison once more. Time seemed to stretch and fold within the walls of the tea shop, each minute a gentle caress, each sip of tea a step closer to healing. The sound of the heartbeat in the tea merged with the soft patter of distant rain outside, creating a symphony of solace that lulled Marigold into a peaceful reverie. In that tender silence, the memory of Clover became not an absence but a presence, a gentle guide in the dark, leading Marigold and all who listened toward a future where loss was met with understanding and love was forever cherished. As the night deepened, the tea shop transformed into a sanctuary where every visitor's sorrow was met with compassion, and every memory was celebrated with quiet dignity. Marigold's story, woven with threads of joy and pain, resonated with the traveler's own hidden sorrows and unspoken hopes. In that shared space of gentle magic and heartfelt remembrance, the traveler felt an ever-deepening connection, not only to Marigold and Elderberry, but to all the lost and found pieces of the human heart that gathered in the Moonlit Tea Shop every night. By the time the cup lay empty and the last rose petal drifted to the floor like a silent benediction, a transformation had taken place. The traveler, now enveloped in a profound sense of empathy and understanding, realized that healing was not about forgetting or erasing the past, but about cherishing every memory, both the painful and the joyful, as a part of the tapestry of life. The soft murmur of the tea's heartbeat faded into a promise that every night, beneath the watchful glow of the moon, the Moonlit Tea Shop would continue to offer its gentle solace, and that every lost friend, every cherished memory, would live on in the magic of the rose petal tea. And as the night whispered on, the traveler stepped quietly back into the cool embrace of the midnight streets, carrying with him a newfound sense of connection and hope, a quiet assurance that in the tender space of loss and love, there is always a gentle light to guide the way. Under the gentle glow of a silvered moon, the traveler returned once more to the Moonlit Tea Shop, the sanctuary of soft lamplight and whispering secrets. Tonight, however, something was different. As the traveler stepped through the familiar creaking door, a subtle shift in the air made their heart flutter with anticipation. Along the far wall, hidden behind an intricate lattice of curling vines and delicate twinkling lights, a small, ancient wooden cabinet caught the traveler's eye. It was locked with an ornate brass latch, its surface carved with symbols and tiny, faded images of stars and leaves. The cabinet, though silent, seemed to hold the promise of something extraordinary, a secret reserved for those who had journeyed far within their own hearts. Elderberry, the wise and gentle badger with a coat of silver and soft auburn, was already at his workbench, carefully polishing a set of porcelain cups. He glanced up with a knowing smile as the traveler approached. "I see you've noticed the cabinet," he said, his voice low and comforting, as though sharing an intimate secret between old friends. "That dear one is not for every visitor. It holds my secret tea, a blend I brew only for those who have, through their journey, learned to release the burdens that weigh upon their souls." The traveler paused, their eyes lingering on the mysterious cabinet, as they felt both curiosity and trepidation stirring within. "Secret tea?" they asked softly. "What is it, Elderberry? And why is it kept hidden away?" Elderberry rose slowly from his workbench and padded over to the cabinet. With deliberate care, he produced a small antique key from a deep pocket in his embroidered vest, a key that shimmered faintly in the muted light. "This key," he explained, "has been with me for many years. It opens not just a lock, but a door to my most cherished memories." The tea within this cabinet is not made of ordinary leaves or herbs. It is a blend infused with the essence of a long-forgotten kindness, a memory of warmth, of love given freely without expectation, and of moments when the heart learned to forgive its own sorrows. He inserted the key into the lock with a soft click. Slowly, the cabinet door creaked open to reveal a small, time-worn tin that glowed with a soft, otherworldly light. The tin, embossed with delicate motifs of roses and moonbeams, held a fragrant blend of dried petals, shimmering herbs, and secret ingredients that seemed to whisper their own lullaby. Elderberry reached in and retrieved a small measuring spoon, sprinkling a precise pinch of the mystical blend into a pot of gently simmering water. As the water began to transform, its surface dancing with iridescent colors of rose gold and lavender, the entire room was filled with an aroma both sweet and slightly musky, reminiscent of a garden at twilight after a rain. The traveler's eyes widened with a mix of wonder and a hint of uncertainty. I'm not sure I'm ready," they murmured, voice trembling as if caught between the desire for healing and the fear of what might be uncovered. Elderberry rested a gentle paw on the traveler's hand and said, "There is no need to be afraid. True, healing comes when we are brave enough to let go of our burdens and open ourselves to the tender gifts of memory and gratitude. This tea does not force you to forget your pain, but rather helps you see the beauty in the kindness that once touched your heart." Taking a deep, steadying breath, the traveler nodded. With careful hands, they accepted the cup that Elderberry offered, its porcelain cool against their skin, and brought it close. The first sip was like an embrace from a long-lost friend. The tea was velvety smooth, with a gentle warmth that radiated from within. In that moment, as the liquid spread through their body, the traveler felt as if time had slowed. Images, soft and hazy at first, began to unfold in their mind's eye, a tender memory of a day long ago when a stranger had shown unexpected kindness. The memory was subtle yet profound. It was a scene from a rainy afternoon in a forgotten corner of the traveler's past. The traveler, then a much younger soul, had found themselves lost in a bustling city. With nowhere to go and heart heavy with uncertainty, they had taken refuge under the awning of a small, dilapidated tea shop. There, an elderly woman with kind eyes had noticed their distress and had offered them a cup of steaming tea, sharing not only her warmth but also her quiet wisdom. "Every cup of tea," she had said, "carries the magic of a moment, of a kindness that can mend even the most wounded heart." The traveler had listened, mesmerized, as the woman recounted stories of her own hardships and the solace she found in the simple act of caring for others. That cup of tea had been a quiet promise that even in loneliness, there was compassion waiting to be discovered. As the memory blossomed within them, the traveler felt tears of gratitude well up, not of sorrow, but of deep, healing thankfulness. They understood that the secret tea was more than just a magical brew. It was a mirror reflecting the warmth of human connection, a reminder that even in moments of solitude, one is never truly alone. The tea had unlocked something within the traveler, a dormant capacity for gratitude, a recognition of past kindnesses that had often been forgotten in the rush of daily life. Elderberry watched quietly, his gentle eyes crinkling with a soft smile as if he, too, was revisiting his own cherished memories. Each of us carries within our hearts a reservoir of kindness, often hidden beneath layers of pain and regret. When we sip this tea, we are invited to remember that kindness, to honor it, and to allow it to lift us up. Let go of the weight you have been carrying and make space for new joy, new love, and new hope. The atmosphere in the shop shifted subtly, as if the very air had taken on a luminous quality. The clink of the porcelain cup, the soft murmur of Elderberry's soothing voice, and the distant sound of a gentle rain outside all mingled to create a symphony of solace. The traveler, now enveloped in the tender magic of the moment, felt as though their soul had been gently unburdened, each heartbeat echoing with a quiet gratitude for the long-forgotten act of kindness that had once lit a small flame in a dark corner of their life. For what felt like an eternity, the traveler and Elderberry sat together in this quiet communion, the secrets of the tea weaving a delicate tapestry of healing and hope. In that shared silence, the traveler found not only the courage to let go of old sorrows, but also the strength to embrace the gentle promise of new beginnings. The memory faded softly, replaced by calm certainty that every act of kindness, however small, leaves an indelible mark on the soul, a reminder that even in our most challenging moments, there is light waiting to be rediscovered. When the tea had dwindled to its last drop, the traveler felt a deep sense of peace, a lightness that made them almost forget the world outside. With a heartfelt smile, they thanked Elderberry, who simply nodded, his eyes filled with the quiet wisdom of one who has seen many such journeys before. Remember, he said softly, the secret tea is not a cure-all, but a gentle reminder. Whenever you feel overwhelmed by the burdens of your heart, you can always return here, and the tea will help you remember the kindness that lies within and around you. As the travelers stepped back out into the cool night, the locked cabinet quietly closed behind them, leaving only the soft glow of its brass latch as a promise of future revelations. They carried with them a newfound sense of gratitude, a gentle, abiding light that whispered of the healing power of kindness, the magic of shared memories, and the enduring comfort of knowing that sometimes the secret to letting go is simply to remember how deeply one has been cared for. And so, under the watchful gaze of the moon and the twinkling stars, the traveler's heart grew a little lighter, as if a heavy stone had been lifted from its depths, leaving behind only the gentle echo of a long-forgotten kindness, now remembered and cherished once more. Under the soft silver glow of a full moon, the Moonlit Tea Shop welcomed a new guest whose eyes told tales of long, weary journeys. The traveler, known simply as Orion, had arrived from a distant land, a place of shifting sands and forgotten stars, clutching an old, worn map with no clear destination. The map's edges were frayed, and its ink had faded under countless suns and moons, symbolizing a life of wandering in search of a place to call home. Orion's footsteps were slow and measured as he crossed the threshold of the tea shop, each step resonating with a silent hope for solace. Inside, the shop was transformed by moonlight streaming through tall, arched windows. The room was bathed in a pale, ethereal light that danced across the walls and mingled with the gentle flicker of lanterns shaped like teapots. The familiar aroma of herbal infusions and ancient wood filled the air, mingling with a cool, nocturnal scent reminiscent of dewy meadows under starlight. At a polished oak counter, Elderberry, the wise, kindly badger with eyes that held centuries of quiet wisdom, welcomed Orion with a warm nod. "Welcome, dear Orion," Elderberry said softly, his voice like a gentle murmur of the night. "I see the weight of many journeys in your eyes, and tonight I have just the brew for you, Moonbeam Tea. It is a special blend meant for those who wander without a destination, for those whose hearts long for a place to belong." Elderberry's pause moved with deliberate grace as he prepared the tea. He selected a rare mixture of silver-leaf herbs and petals that had only ever been collected on nights when the moon was at its fullest and brightest. Each ingredient shimmered subtly, as if holding captive the very essence of moonlight. The herbs were carefully added to a gleaming copper teapot, and as hot water poured in, the tea began to transform. The liquid swirled with iridescent hues, soft blues and silvers that mimicked the celestial dance of moonbeams across a quiet lake. As the teapot steamed, a faint, lilting melody arose, a lullaby seemingly sung by the moon itself. The sound was delicate and soothing, echoing throughout the shop in a manner that touched the soul, as if it were a long-forgotten song of comfort. The melody wrapped itself around Orion like a silken shawl, easing the tight knots of fatigue and sorrow that had accumulated over years of restless wandering. Elderberry poured the luminous tea into a fine porcelain cup, its rim adorned with tiny, painted crescents and stars. The tea's surface glowed softly, each sip a promise of healing and remembrance. Orion accepted the cup with trembling hands, feeling the cool porcelain and the comforting warmth radiating from within. "Thank you," Orion whispered, voice thick with emotion. "I have searched far and wide, and yet I never felt the call of home as deeply as I do now." Settling into a cushioned seat near the window where moonlight pooled like liquid silver, Orion lifted the cup to his lips. The first taste was cool and refreshing, a gentle cascade of flavors that were at once delicate and profound. It was as if the tea carried the crispness of a mountain night and the soft glow of distant stars. With every sip, Orion felt memories stirring within him, a long-lost recollection of a childhood spent under vast, starlit skies, a gentle reminder of tender moments shared with loved ones in a quiet village by the sea. In the depths of the tea's magic, visions began to unfurl before Orion's eyes. He saw a coastal village bathed in the warm hues of dawn, where the sea whispered lullabies to the shore and the scent of salt and wildflowers mingled in the air. He recalled the comforting murmur of familiar voices and the laughter of friends whose presence was as fleeting as a comet's trail. The moonbeam tea wove these fragmented memories into a tapestry of homecoming, a place where every corner was filled with the echoes of care and belonging. As the silvery melody of the tea's lullaby filled the room, Orion's eyelids grew heavy. The gentle music, coupled with the serene glow of moonlight, lulled him into a state of blissful reverie. In that moment, the boundaries of time and distance dissolved, and the traveler was transported to a realm of universal comfort, a world where every lost traveler could finally rest, where the heart found its quiet refuge amid the endless night. Elderberry watched over Orion with a tender, knowing smile. "Let your dreams guide you," he murmured softly, "for tonight you are not alone in your journey." The Moonlit Tea Shop is a sanctuary for every soul seeking solace. May the moonbeam tea carry you to the comforting embrace of home, wherever that may be in your heart. Slowly, Orion's breathing deepened as sleep claimed him. His cup rested on the table, its last few droplets shimmering like tiny orbs of moonlight. In his dreams, Orion wandered through fields of soft, luminescent light, following a gentle path that led him to a place filled with the laughter of loved ones, the warmth of familiar hearts, and the eternal, soothing presence of the moon. Outside, the night remained quiet and watchful. The Moonlit Tea Shop, with its magical blend of teas and tender rituals, stood as a beacon of hope and healing, a place where every traveler, weary from the way of the world, could rediscover the universal comfort of home. And as the distant stars twinkled in the vast expanse above, the gentle, silver light of the moonbeam tea promised that no matter how far one roamed, a place of solace and belonging was always waiting just around the corner. Thus, under the ever-present lullaby of the moon, the traveler's dreams carry the promise of tomorrow, a tomorrow filled with gentle reunions, quiet strength, and the unwavering assurance that the Moonlit Tea Shop would forever be a haven for every soul in search of home. Under the soft, fading glow of the moon and amidst the quiet hum of the sleeping village, the traveler felt a gentle tug at their heart, a bittersweet call that it was time to bring their long, winding journey to a close. The cobblestone streets outside, still damp from a recent rain, shimmered under the starlight as if sprinkled with countless tiny diamonds. Tonight, as the night deepened into a serene silence, the traveler made their way back to the Moonlit Tea Shop one final time. The familiar door creaked open as if welcoming an old friend home. Inside, the tea shop was bathed in a tender amber glow cast by an array of antique lanterns. The air was perfumed with a delicate blend of chamomile, honey, and a hint of something ancient and comforting, an aroma that spoke of cherished memories and promises of renewal. Every detail of the shop seemed to whisper farewell. The gentle clink of porcelain cups, the soft rustle of dried herbs in glass jars, and even the quiet, rhythmic ticking of a weathered clock on the wall all contributed to a feeling that time, too, was preparing to yield to a gentle conclusion. At the counter, Elderberry, the wise and kind badger whose eyes had witnessed countless midnight miracles, stood quietly polishing a well-worn teapot. His fur, now touched with strands of silver, shimmered softly in the lantern light, and his smile was warm, yet touched with a wistful grace. He nodded in recognition as the traveler approached, and without a word, motioned to a small table by the window, where the cool night air mingled with the lingering warmth inside. "Welcome back, dear friend," Elderberry said softly, his voice echoing like a familiar lullaby. I knew that sooner or later the time would come for you to return for the final cup. Tonight, I have prepared chamomile meadow tea, the very same brew that first welcomed you into this enchanted world. His words were gentle, carrying the weight of many shared nights and the silent promise that every ending was but the seed of a new beginning. Elderberry turned his careful attention to a steaming pot of tea. As he poured the amber liquid into a delicate cup adorned with tiny illustrations of sunlit meadows and dancing bees, the room seemed to fill with the soft, golden light of a long-ago sunrise. The chamomile meadow tea was a brew that held within it the memories of sun-drenched fields, the gentle hum of busy bees, and the peaceful murmur of a quiet summer day. It was a tea that, from the very first sip, had lifted the traveler from the depths of sleepless worry into the realm of gentle dreams and quiet contemplation. The traveler took the cup in trembling hands, feeling the cool porcelain against their skin and the warm promise of the tea radiating from within. With each sip, the flavor unfolded like a cherished memory. Subtle floral notes mingled with the soft sweetness of chamomile and the earthy whisper of fresh meadow grass. As the tea cascaded over the tongue, a comforting wave of serenity spread through the traveler's being, washing away the remnants of countless restless nights and the bittersweet tang of past sorrows. In the quiet of that moment, memories of the entire journey came rushing back. They recalled the first night when a glowing door had led them into a world of magical teas and hidden stories. They remembered the nervous owl who had found courage with the help of lavender star tea, the sea turtle whose dreams were soothed by the sound of mint wave tea, and the shy fox whose heart was gently healed with honeyed memory tea. They had listened to a restless child's fears being transformed by cinnamon dream tea, and felt the tender solace of jasmine whisper tea as a lonely wolf dreamed of reunion. The rose petal tea had shared the poignant tale of a grieving rabbit, and the secret tea had gently coaxed them to release their burdens, revealing a long-forgotten kindness that warmed their soul. Moonbeam tea had guided a weary traveler like Orion to the comforting vision of home. Each cup, each blend had been a step along a path of healing, a quiet odyssey of heart and mind that had slowly woven together the frayed edges of their spirit into a tapestry of peace. Now, as the travelers sat in the familiar haven, the final chapter of this nocturnal journey unfolded like the closing lines of a cherished lullaby. The soft glow of the lanterns, the gentle rustling of petals that had once floated on the floor, and the murmuring warmth of Elderberry's steady voice all conspired to create an atmosphere of complete, unburdened tranquility. As the traveler gazed into the cup, the chamomile tea seemed to shimmer with the light of 1,000 gentle memories. They closed their eyes, letting the soothing flavors transport them back to the sunlit fields of their earliest memory, the one that had first lifted them from the depths of worry when they discovered the magical door. It was as if the tea whispered to them, "Remember the calm, remember the light, remember that every ending is a new beginning." In that silent, profound communion with the tea, the traveler felt every worry dissolve into the warm, embracing comfort of cherished memories and hopeful promises. Elderberry stepped closer, placing a gentle, reassuring paw on the traveler's shoulder. "Your journey has been long and full of wonder," he murmured, his voice imbued with gentle pride and deep empathy. "In every cup of tea you have discovered a piece of yourself, a memory, a lesson, a quiet hope. And now, as you prepare to leave this magical village, know that the peace you have found here is a treasure that you carry within you. The Moonlit Tea Shop will always be here, a sanctuary in the night, waiting for you when you need a reminder of the kindness, the love, and the healing that reside in every heart." The travelers slowly nodded, their eyes glistening with a mixture of gratitude and quiet farewell. They savored the last sips of the chamomile meadow tea, as if each drop were a cherished note in the final verse of an unforgettable song. The tea's delicate warmth seeped deep into their bones, filling the silent spaces with a renewed sense of calm and purpose. In that sacred moment, every heartache and every moment of joy from their long journey converged, creating a tapestry of emotions that was as bittersweet as it was beautiful. When the final drop of tea was consumed, the traveler gently set the cup down on the table. Outside, the cool, crisp air of the night awaited, carrying with it the distant sound of a gentle breeze rustling through the cobblestone streets. The traveler rose slowly, feeling as though they were leaving behind not just a tea shop, but an entire universe of healing and whispered memories. With one last look, they met Elderberry's eyes, a silent exchange filled with understanding, love, and the promise of enduring connection. "Thank you, Elderberry," the traveler said softly, voice quivering with emotion. "Thank you for every cup, every story, and every quiet moment of healing. I will carry this peace with me wherever I go." Elderberry's smile deepened, and he leaned in to whisper as though sharing a secret meant only for the heart of a true friend. "Remember, my dear, the tea shop is not just a place. It is a sanctuary of hope and love, a haven for every soul. Whenever the night grows too dark or your heart feels too heavy, know that this door and the magic within it will always be open for you." With those final words echoing in the stillness of the tea shop, the travelers stepped out into the embracing arms of the night. The path back to the village was familiar now, a gentle corridor of moonlit cobblestones that seemed to shimmer with the soft glow of memories and newfound hope. As the traveler walked slowly along the quiet street, each step felt light and unburdened, as if the weight of the world had been replaced by the gentle cadence of a well-loved lullaby. Above, the stars twinkled with a timeless brilliance, and the moon cast its serene glow upon the world, a silent witness to the journey of every weary soul. In that moment, the traveler realized that while they might leave the moonlit tea shop behind, the lessons and the healing they had found there would remain with them always, a quiet, steady flame in the heart, burning softly against the darkness. And so, with the gentle promise of a new dawn on the horizon, the traveler continued homeward, each step a quiet testament to the transformative power of kindness, connection, and the healing magic of a simple cup of tea. The night whispered its eternal promise that no matter where the path may lead, there would always be a place to return, a place where the spirit could rest, where memories were cherished, and where the soft glow of moonlit magic would forever light the way.